Welcome everyone to the Midday Connect. Grateful for our sponsors and partners here. Glad to have Park Howell with us for his talk and presentation and some Q&A following. If you could, it's always fun to see where people are coming from. So in your name, if you want to go ahead and rename yourself and just throw in your city, state, or country, just so we can see where people are coming from, that's always fun. And if you are interested in presenting on a topic that you think is relevant to founders, solopreneurs, and your peers here at Midday Connect, go ahead and shoot Hannah a message or a chat today. We'll see where we can slot you in. If you'd like to have your company logo there at the bottom, you can also connect with Hannah, and that would be awesome. Cool. This is fun to see where people are coming from. Let's go ahead and kick it over to Park and give it to you.
All right. Thanks, Spencer, and thanks everyone for being here. It's my honor to be with you today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I don't know, Hannah, if you've got to unshare yours, if you could see me okay. Is that coming through loud and clear?
Got it.
Beautiful. Well, founders, solopreneurs, I guess I fall into that category too. I've been in the advertising, branding, marketing world almost 40 years. I ran my own ad agency in Phoenix, Arizona. For 20 of those years, came very much out of the traditional side of advertising. I really loved running my agency for 10 of those years. The second 10, when we were all fighting with digital media and marketing and e-commerce and that, trying to figure it out, I kind of lost my love for the advertising world because it just became a bunch of noise, just a cacophony of communication coming at us. So I went in search for an answer in the early 2000s, right when you first started hearing the storytelling buzzword kind of start emerging back then. I realized we had been doing it for all of our careers. We just weren't doing it intentionally. And I found when I really started studying story, and using these proven frameworks that I first learned out of Hollywood and now have boiled down to these three primary frameworks. The one that I'm going to show you today, we call the DNA of story, called the and, but, therefore. It is essentially the applied science. It is an algorithm, is a proven structure that when you use it, it will blow you away about how engaging it is. Engagement rates going up, sales presentations being stronger. I'm no longer getting as ghosted in your emails. I mean, you can use this framework everywhere. And it is the DNA of story because once you get this down, everything else in the storytelling world becomes much easier. It leads literally to the bewitchery of story. And you know what I mean by that is when you hear a good story, you laugh, you cry, it makes the hair stand up on your arms, gives you goosebumps, you have a visceral reaction to story. That is the bewitchery that we're trying to, create in business communications. But in the B2B world in particular, they're not particularly good at storytelling because they lead with logic and reason when what your audience, that Homo sapiens storytelling ape sitting across from you, really wants is the emotional pull of a story. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. You're in good company. I do this for organizations around the world. Like I said, I ran my agency for 20 years, but in 2016, I pivoted away after spending 10 years studying story and applying it in our agency world. And now all I do is consult, teach, coach, and speak on the power of story to absolutely move the needle for businesses. And it's more important now than ever. If you're familiar with the State of the Business Communication Report done by Harris Poll and Grammarly, they studied 100 Fortune 500 companies in America, and they learned that $1.2 trillion is lost annually due to miscommunication, both inside and outside of the organization. And if you boil that down, it equates to one lost day of productivity per person per week, because people don't understand what their colleagues are trying to tell them. Customers don't understand what brands are trying to tell them. They're being bombarded with information when what they really want is the hook of a story. And we're all dealing with this attention economy. Fabulous book came out last year about stolen focus. And we all are competing against this stolen focus where people just simply don't have the attention span, the time, or the energy to try to make sense out of whatever it is you're communicating to them. So if you are confusing, you lose. If you obfuscate, forget it. You're out of there, because we are all fighting this device. We are completely bombarded. Our brains are with all this information, and it steals our attention both online and off. You see it in meetings, you see it in interpersonal communications. And so I went looking for an answer to this, and I found it with the very first technology that we all use as cavemen and cavewomen to survive the savannah and to thrive in today, and that is storytelling. Story is primal. It's how we, meaning-making machines, understand the world around us and learn what we need to do to move forward, to not just survive, but to thrive. Now, the interesting thing is our brain makes up 2% of our body mass, yet it consumes 20% of our calories or 20% of our energy. It has one job, that is survival of the being. It does not want to burn any of that energy trying to understand what the hell's going on. It still thinks it has to reserve that energy so that we could sprint away from that saber-toothed tiger that is waiting for us around the corner. Well, we know we don't have those perils in this day and age, but if we confuse that brain, it is automatically triggered to shut down, make up its own story, and move on. That's why we want to tell it a story. We want it to picture what we're talking about. We want that bewitchery to happen so that it can feel it, it can see it, it can become an active part of whatever we are communicating. There is no bullet point list in the world that is going to do what a story will do for you. There is no messaging around products, features, and functions that is going to do for you what a story does, because the motherboard of our brain is hardwired to make meaning out of the context of the stories we tell it. So we want to tap into the three forces of story in all of our communications. Those are agreement, contradiction, consequence, that then plays to that pattern-seeking, problem-solving, decision-making, buying limbic brain. Again, it's how it's wired to make meaning out of the madness of being human beings. Let me give you a quick example of an ABT in action. I'm going to use it for this presentation. As a marketer, you want to connect deeply with your audiences and convert them to lifelong customers. That is your statement of agreement to get them nodding yes. That's exactly what I want. You understand me. You appreciate what I want. Now you insert the contradiction. This is what really fires up that limbic buying brain. But you're not connecting like you could because you use non-narrative messages that get drowned out in the cacophony of communication we all compete in. Therefore, the answer: immediately hack through the noise and hook into the hearts with the ABT Agile Narrative Framework that uses the three forces of story that our primal limbic buying brain adores. Here's how you build it. The three words, and, but, therefore, what we call, of course, the ABT. That statement of agreement. You always begin with a shared vision for a brighter future for tomorrow. You don't start with the problem. You want to identify your audience so that you're telling your story from their point of view. You want to, define what it is that they want relative to your offering and why it's important to them. That's your statement of agreement. It's your setup. It's essentially act one of the tripartite structure to storytelling. Now the contradiction. But why don't they have what they want? What is the problem that you are here to help solve for them? It's not two problems. It's not three problems. It's one problem. You always want to deal from a singular problem solution dynamic for the limbic brain to actually care and pay attention. Then there's the statement of consequence. What's the way forward? Therefore, how will you help them get what they want? I'm going to show this to you in a few examples, both in culture and in business, so you can see how this is actually all around us. We didn't invent it. It has been around since literally the first recorded story of Gilgamesh. Now, I first learned about the ABT in 2013 from Dr. Randy Olson, Harvard PhD evolutionary biologist. gives up tenure in his mid-30s, goes to USC Film School, graduates, produces and directs 3 documentaries on climate change and global warming. But now his whole work is around teaching scientists and academics what he learned in Hollywood about communicating their big ideas in a simple way that people can get. All of his work is around the and, but, therefore. He and I, once I saw it, we became fast friends. I have helped him evolve the ABT from his work in science, and I've translated it over to the business world. And he and I co-authored this book last year, The Narrative Gym for Business. It's a quick little 75-page guide that you can have by your side to help you craft your ABTs as you're moving forward. And you can get it on Amazon. I think it's all of $7, so it's readily accessible. Or if you'd like to hear about my 10-year journey of learning the ABT and where I use it, listen to my podcast, The Business of Story. I've been doing it for 8 years. This was show number 400 at my anniversary episode last year. And I just walk you through all the people that have had an impact on me and where they use the ABT in all industries. By the way, this week is my 450th anniversary episode of The Business of Story. And I'm showing you how to use the know, like, and trust storytelling flywheel so that you can build momentum with your storytelling through this strategy of the know, like, and trust storytelling flywheel. Check that out. At the very beginning of that knowing is using the ABT to absolutely clarify your brand story, who you are for, what problem you solve, and why you are the go-to brand in your category to solve that problem. So 10 years ago when I learned about this, I thought this seems like it's too good to be true. I mean, I immediately could appreciate the power of making a complex message simple using the ABT. So I started doing some research and thought, where else has this thing shown up? Then I realized virtually every nursery rhyme that has stood the test of time is built on this and, but, therefore structure. For instance, Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. Now you'll look at that and say, Park, I don't see an and, but, therefore there anywhere, but the structure's there. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet and she was eating her curds and whey. Act 1, statement of agreement, simply setting the stage so everybody in the room is on the same page. Now the complication, but along came a spider who sat down beside her, and the consequence of that, therefore, frightened Miss Muffet away. Setup, problem, resolution, agreement, contradiction, consequence. Our pattern-seeking, problem-solving, decision-making, buying brain loves to get information in this order. Where else? Great legendary speeches like the Gettysburg Address are built using the and, but, therefore. And these speechwriters don't even know they're doing it. They're just good, intuitive storytellers. Lincoln said, and I'll paraphrase, we were once a great and mighty nation, but now we're engaged in a great civil war. Therefore, we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. The interesting thing about the Gettysburg Address is it's only 2 minutes long, roughly about 272 words. And when you look at it, you'll find it's 2 embedded ABTs for both, the beginning and end of that particular presentation. Amazing. But there it is. Now, did Lincoln purposely use the ABT? No, never heard of it. But he was just a good intuitive storyteller. We are all intuitive storytellers by being Homo sapiens. I just want you to become intentional by using the and, but, therefore, so that you can win every time with your communications versus winging it by being intuitive about it, right? And as you look around, you are going to see the ABT now everywhere. For instance, especially in pop culture. Check this out. You took your time with the hey, Carly Rae Jepsen fans out there. You gave me nothing at all, but still you're in my way. I beg and borrow and steal at first sight, and it's real. I didn't know I would feel it, but it's in my way. Your stare was holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing, hot night wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right
you, baby, but here's my number, so call me maybe.
So Call Me Maybe, whether you like it or not, has over 1.4 billion views on YouTube. And is it because they use the ABT in the chorus? Well, it's pretty catchy. Did they know about the ABT and intentionally use it? No, they were just good intuitive storytellers. Again, I want you to move from being an intuitive storyteller to an intentional one using it, because the ABT is very much like the arrow and the FedEx logo. Once you see it, once you know about it after the session, you are going to start seeing it everywhere. And you can use it in all of your communications. Use it in your email writing, use it in your landing pages, use it in your brand development. There's a gentleman out in Silicon Valley, Christopher Lockhead, who is a legendary brander, marketer for technology businesses out there. He wrote one of my favorite books of all time called Play Bigger. And if you really want to understand category design and how to do this, Play Bigger is a fantastic book as a reference guide. I showed him, talked to Christopher on his podcast about the ABT, and he had never heard about it before. And then he started using it, and it kind of blew his mind. Here's what he had to say about his first uses with the ABT.
So you gave me a gift with the ABT. You know, in category design, we have this thing called a POV, a point of view. And it is simply structured very similarly to that of the ABT, which is essentially, and this is such a profound insight, it sounds like it's nothing, just like the ABT. In a point of view, it goes like this. Nobody buys a solution until they have a problem. And so a point of view starts with framing, naming, and claiming a problem. And when people understand the problem/opportunity, then they become interested in the solution. And then, of course, the third piece from a POV perspective is how your product or service, or your idea for that matter, you might not be actually marketing or selling anything, bridges the gap between the problem/opportunity and therefore the solution. Okay, so with all that said, why do I love the ABT? The ABT takes the thinking that we did around points of view and does a fantastic, legendary double click on it. And that's why the and, but, and therefore model is pure genius. It allows you to relate to people, then it gives them the but, which tees up the problem, and then the therefore, which points the way to the different future, aka solution. And it's easily rememberable. Blah, blah, blah. And if you start to play with it, as I have since you taught it to me, just like anything working, you're like, wow, it's almost weird how this works.
So what he's relating to after that is the day after, the Friday after my session with him, he wrote this tweet. And then he took a picture of it, a screen grab of it, and sent it to me. I don't know if this, is this over the, let me move this over here. And it's the first time he had ever used an ABT. Most entrepreneurs would love to design a new category and build $1 billion business. But there is so much startup BS on Twitter, it's hard to know who to listen to. Therefore, as implied, meet David Sachs, he knows a few things. Within 6 hours of Christopher posting his very first ABT, he got over 60,000 engagements. It blew his mind. Now he uses it for everything from setting up his guests on his podcast to his numerous articles he writes on Substack. He is a believer. And you can use it in lots of different areas. A client of mine, Trimble, who's a SaaS provider out of Denver. Let me just show you a before and after. Then I'm going to show you the implications of a before and after. So they wrote this very important post. This was actually in March of 2022. To honor our employees around the world, on March 4th, Trimble staff have a mental health day to focus on their personal well-being. In order to serve our customers, we must take care of our people, and that starts with a work-life balance. You read that, it is non-narrative. You can put an and in front of those sentences, and it's just and. Our limbic brain just doesn't care about that stuff. It's got to have a problem to solve. So look, all we do is rearrange it and make it narrative. To serve our customers, we take care of our people, and that starts with a work-life balance. Our statement of agreement, everyone can agree with that. Yep, makes sense, but life can feel chaotic for all of us right now. So they're inviting you into their story. Therefore, what's the solution? On March 4th, Trimble staff around the world have a mental health day to focus on their personal well-being. Setup, problem resolution, a non-narrative sentence message now created as a narrative story. And when we did this, we did an A/B test in March of 2022 in 5 different countries. We took what they did in March for their LinkedIn campaigns and we reformatted them as ABTs in April. And look at what happened to their engagement rate. UK, Netherlands went from 3.9 to 6.7, France up to 17.5, Benelux 8.5. Across the board, their engagement rate, by not rewriting their stuff, just reframing it using the ABT, increased by over 400%. Pretty powerful stuff, right? And then when you look around, I came across this not too long ago on LinkedIn, and I just want you to watch it. It goes by pretty quickly. A beautiful little 15-second video story by Abbott Labs. Look how they place the audience at the center of the story. They've got it's an and, but, therefore all the way through. I've never taught them this, so it's just something they did, but you can see the power of it. Check it out. So the beauty of that thing is it underscores 2 primary storytelling principles. Principle number 1 is your story is not about you. It's not about your brand. It's not about your product or service. Nobody cares. Your story is always about your audience. Number 2, the story is not about what you make. It's about what you make happen. Outcomes in storytelling always outperform offerings every single time. Again, people don't care about your product or service. They only care about what you can make happen in their life. So we'll open it up to some Q&A. Here is the basic structure of the and, but, therefore. Always identify your number 1 audience at the beginning. What is it that they want relative to your offering? So they can appreciate the fact you've done your discovery and you appreciate what they want in the world and why it's important to them. You're leveling it up. Shared statement of agreement, a shared vision for a brighter tomorrow. Now the problem, but you don't have it because of this major gap. Yes, that's right. So then the limbic brain begs, what's the answer? Therefore, here, just imagine when you get it, what you're going to feel like when you do this with us. You come at the very end. And that link down at the bottom, you can go there to learn more about the ABT. And I even have a micro training course there. If you're interested, take it and start applying it right away. With that, let's open it up for a little Q&A.
Thanks, Park. That was awesome. Go ahead and throw something in the chat if you've got a question or come off mute. I have a question to get started. It seems like to me there's a presumption with the top there, number 1 audience, what they want, that we know who they are and what they want, but there's a lot of work that goes into that, right, Park? So can you talk for a minute about, driving to the audience and what they want and actually kind of getting that target?
Well, I'm a big believer in the 80-20, the Pareto principle rule. And that is, especially in startups, when things are getting rolling, they're trying to kind of be all things to all people to figure out where their real business is going to be. What I want people to do is what I coach them to do is go and find that one audience that is making up 80% of your business. It's coming from 20% of your customers, and those 20% are probably the same persona. So do your due diligence. Sometimes you have to be out and you've got to be looking and talking to a few different audiences until you find who that number 1 audience is. And then it's going directly after them by placing them as that number 1 audience right here. So it's trial and error, it's discovery, and it's looking at your books. Who is responsible for 80% of your business? Who being that one audience?
All right, don't be shy.
I'll give you an example of that while people are thinking through this. I was working with a international renowned sales consultant, Alice Hyman, and maybe some of you know Alice. She comes from the Miller Hyman sales tree. Her dad was the Hyman in the Miller Hyman. And I was working with her when she was trying to get her ABT down for sales consulting, and which is, there are a dime a dozen out there, talking about a commoditized world. And so we kept doing some digging, and we found out really her number one audience was not the chief revenue officer, was not sales and marketing officer. It wasn't even, the head of sales. It was the CEO, because her position was always that if your sales are not where you want them, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, it's your fault. It's no one else's fault. You've got the wrong system in place, the wrong team in place, the wrong coaching in place, whatever it is. So we boiled it down to, if this was her ABT, she would begin with, as a CEO of a robust company, who wants to 10x your sales. And if you had the right team in place, then, you would experience that. But you're not growing as fast as you like. And guess what? It's your fault. She calls them out immediately. Therefore, imagine getting your team in place with my system that will help you as the CEO totally fine tune and direct the sales to achieve that 10x you're looking for. So that would be an example of, a lot of people would say, well, she could be talking to 5 or 6 different audiences for her thing, but no, she's down to a CEO, and she calls them out specifically on her website and all of her communications, on her great podcast. She's always talking to CEOs and what they're going through in their sales.
Like a question from Parker. From a messaging standpoint, can a well-made testimonial help deliver this ABT story? Is this one of the more effective ways to use ABT?
Yeah, usually it is. It's one of there's many, many ways to use the ABT. If you're doing a customer testimonial, it's great to set it up using it ABT, because what often happens in a testimonial is we make the mistake of putting our brand at the center of the story. We come off like we're the hero, we're the champs, we're so great. What you need to do is place your audience, your customer, at the center of the story. And in this case, you're not talking about their company per se. You're talking about an individual within that organization that came to you for help to achieve something that, they needed to overcome. And then by proxy, they represent the organization. So you're going to use the and, but, therefore in a setup, but you're also going to use the second framework that we teach, called the 5 primal elements of a short story, which is simply an expanded and, but, therefore. Those 5 primal elements are a timestamp. When did this happen? When did you first meet this customer? What were they looking for? That triggers the limbic brain. It says, oh, something must have happened because you're starting me at a point in time. So I better pay attention in case whatever happens to me, so I know what to do with it. Then you add a location stamp. Where did this happen? Because you're firing up the theater of the mind. It can now start picturing it and start relating to it. The third step, you have a central character. You're not talking about 2 people. You're not talking about a team, a division, a department, a brand. You're talking about one individual that by proxy represents all those other people. Why? Because our caveman, cavewoman, limbic brain can relate to a single individual. It doesn't relate to masses. It doesn't relate to multitudes. So then you want to introduce them, and what is it that they wanted? Then the action and surprise, which comes in as the but. What went down? What did they try? Where did they fail at? When did they bring you in? How did you get pushback on when you came in? And then you resolve their issue for them, which leads to the 5th step of the aha moment. How does this aha moment underscore the business point you were trying to make? And so you've got timestamp, location stamp, central character, action and surprise that leads to the aha moment. And the reason why you want to do this is everyone will argue with your expertise, with your opinions, with your assertions, with your data, but they can't argue with a true story told about the impact you're having that is well told. And so you use the ABT to get the structure down, and then you use the 5 primal elements to add a little bit more specificity to it, because the power of storytelling always rests in the specifics. So your brain can fire up, see it, feel it, become an active part of it.
So there's a couple other questions here. Why don't you maybe Park take a look and see how you want to prioritize these?
All right, let me get out of this then so I can get back to my questions. What are the biggest mistakes you have seen of people make when trying to use the ABT framework? Mistake number 1, they start with the problem. You don't want to do that even if you've been coached to do that. And what we found, the reason why, is when you are going to work in as a consultant to a client and you pull out what you believe their problem is, they may push back. Even if you're accurate and you know from the outside looking in what their problem is, they may not think that that's their problem. They may think their problem's over here, and you've immediately set up a divisive relationship. Always start with that shared vision, that statement of agreement. Here's what you want, and here's why it's important to you, right? Oh yeah, that's exactly right. But you're frustrated because you don't have it due to this problem. No, that's right. Yep. Therefore, imagine, moving forward. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake I see is introducing your brand way too soon. Your brand does not come in till the second half of the therefore statement of consequence. The reason why is you want to remain focused on your audience. What is it that they want and why that's important to them, and how they can get it if they work with you. You probably have heard it 1,000 times. Your audience is the hero of the story. They are the protagonist. You play the important role of mentor or guide to help them get what they want. So that's what I'd say. Just follow that framework as best you can. Does the ABT change across the marketing funnel, awareness to conversion? It doesn't change. The format has been around literally since the beginning of time. You see it everywhere. So all that's going to change is your content. How are you changing that message? But I don't want you to get away from using the ABT, because you'll tend to become non-narrative and, which is boring to our limbic brain. And when, just ask yourself, when was the last time you were bored into buying anything? So your content will change, but the chassis of that content, the ABT framework, remains the same: setup, problem, resolution. So in a sales presentation, when is the best time to drop ABT, or is a constant process during? Great question. It's a little bit like Lincoln selling the Gettysburg Address. Embed your ABTs. Here's what I tell people on sales presentations. Usually you can go in there and we tend to kind of get all over the place. I want you to burn the calories and the energy to write a singular ABT for you first to focus that presentation. So while the ABT is a powerful narrative tool, it's also a fantastic focusing tool. It's also a fantastic strategy tool, and it's also a fantastic listening tool. So what I do, start with an ABT, is what is your ABT for that presentation? Then I craft it specifically for the audience. I start with an ABT to set it up so everybody knows where I am. I will share a short little anecdotal story to illustrate the problem solution dynamic that I make with my ABT. And then I jump into the logic, reason, and data to support the points I've made above. Every single time I am introducing a new support point, typically you have 2 or 3 points that support your overall narrative for that presentation. Every time I introduce a new point, I will use an ABT to set it up. And then I'll quite often use a little anecdotal story to illustrate it, to show it, so that storytelling monkey can picture it. And then I'll back it up with the logic and the reason, the data, the charts and graphs. So you start with the motion, you punctuate it with your data, and then you just keep closing that circle. So ABT, story, data. ABT, story, data. And what you're really trying to do is to design that story arc from beginning to end of that presentation. And it'll blow you away as about how powerful that is. Funny thing about that, I did this with Sharp Electronics about 1.5 years ago. I had 135 of their sales team on the call. And I took one of their landing pages. By the way, this is a great thing to do right after this session. Go to one of your landing pages and see if it's non-narrative boring, and then rewrite it as an ABT and watch what happens with the conversion rate of that landing page. I did that for Sharp, and they had this big long page, and it was blah 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 blah, all about them, how wonderful they were. I switched it and I rewrote it from the prospect's point of view, reduced it by 2/3. It was a setup problem resolution. Well, one of their national sales guys lifted, he did a screenshot of that slide, dropped it into his presentation he was doing the next day, went in, and he said he had been working on a deal for 6 months, getting nowhere, and he was able to sign that piece of business the very next day. And he said the only thing he did differently was went back to his sales presentation and reframed it using that particular ABT. And he goes, it was like magic. It was bewitching. I hear that time and time again, because you're using the ABT first as a focusing tool to get your sales presentation down. Then you're using it as a narrative tool to be able to play to that buying limbic brain. I got another one. I'm curious how this apply with a pitch deck. If we don't start with the problem first, maybe I misunderstood this important point. Pitch deck. You can start with the problem, but I want you to do an ABT or an A/B test on it. Why don't you start with what the solution could be? What does everybody in the room want? But why don't they have it? Therefore, let me show you how I'm going to help you get it. And give it a go. See what happens. Now, working with Microchip, that question came in, and they said, one of the guys said, we've been using the ABT, but we get these really impatient engineers that we're working with. So what they have started doing is they actually do quickly introduce the problem, just something really fast, and then they set up the and here's what you want for whatever. Then the but to really expand on that problem, to amplify the pain of that problem, and then the therefore moving forward. And they said they've had success with that, BABT. But that problem statement up top is just a placeholder, just to set up the ABT to get going. Try it either way. There's no right or wrong. It's just whatever ultimately works for you. I guess, did I get through them all? Anybody raise their hand? Question on any of that?
I think you covered it. If there's one more question out there, take it.
Spencer, this is something that, even though I learned it back in 2013, it's something I really wished I had learned in the 3rd grade, because it's just that much more powerful to get you as the communicator, storyteller, focused on what you're trying to say, and then to use it throughout that communication to keep hooking your audience and keep pulling them along.
Yeah, I think I'll teach my 4th grader and see what happens.
Yeah, give it a go.
I'm sure it'll be used against me. If people want to get connected with you, can you throw back up a slide that's got your information on it?
Yeah, why don't let's
Or you
see.
can put it in the chat.
Yeah, let me do this. If you need to reach me, here's my email. Feel free to reach out to me, or if you want to take a deeper dive on the ABT and start applying it in your world, here's the link to that. And then LinkedIn is typically my preferred social media. It's just my handle, Park Howell. Easy to find there.
Awesome.
And yeah, if I can be of service to any and all of you, just let me know. I do virtual trainings like this. I do a lot of in-person training. I got my show out, today, as I mentioned, about the storytelling flywheel. I think, especially as founders and startup solopreneurs, you'll enjoy how that works, becoming better known for what you do, using storytelling to become vastly more likable, and then paying off the promises you make in those stories to become the trusted provider, so that your customers are sharing your story with their world to what? Make you better known, even more likable and immensely trusted, and the wheel continues on.
This is great. Thanks so much, Park. Thanks everyone for coming out. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Park.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And if you're ever in Northern Arizona, come by and see me.